Ready to roll?
Let's do
Ready
it.
to roll. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right, I know that slides are not super fun, so I'm gonna try and do as few slides as possible and kind of jump back and forth on the platform just to keep it fun. And you know what? I'll even do my handy dandy Cursor Pro. You know what's funny, Monty? I get probably asked more questions from people that watch the replays and stuff. What are you using for your mouse than the actual material?
Yeah, you should just post a link into that for into the chat for everybody to be able to go grab that.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about today was how in all along the vein of profile headlines. And so just for clarity, when we're talking about a profile headline, we're talking about this right here. So, not to be confused with your title or anything down here. Your headline is this one specific line in your profile. And I wanted to talk about how a bad headline, and I realize that bad headline can be very subjective. We all have opinions here, but a bad headline will cost you opportunity. Absolutely. And for reference, let's see here. Just the other day, I posted a screenshot of this when I was on my phone. This isn't part of the slides, but when I was on my phone and you go to invitations, there are two, on my phone, it was two, and then you're put in the show more drawer. So on my desktop, there's 1, 2, 3, and there's only one here is a actual invite to connect. This is an event. This is to follow the company page. And then you get put in the show more drawer. And when I'm looking at this, I mean, headline is huge. If someone's going to catch my attention, headline. If someone's going to be in the newsfeed, the headline is there. Your inbox, it's everywhere. It is so super critical. And having a bad profile headline, we'll get into it. It's absolutely going to cost you opportunity. So what I did this morning is I wanted to give us a visual on how people's attention is drawn to the headline and like how it plays out. So I went on my newsfeed this morning, Vivica, literally you were just right at the top. So I was like, oh, great. Maybe she'll be here today. So there you go. I grabbed a screenshot. And the point that I want to make here is that your headline right here, it really is your first impression. It really is. So this is just kind of what your eye sees, and it's bigger than usual. So this is what your eye sees, but this is what your eyes do. Okay, number one is you read the name. And I find when I'm going through and I'm just scrolling in here or whatever, it's almost like it takes more energy for my brain to do facial recognition on pictures than it does to read the name. And so what I found myself doing is like I usually am going to read the name first almost every single time. So you read the name first, and then if the name is familiar, you verify with the picture to make sure it's the right person. And then you read the headline. You go to Z pattern, right? You go here, here, here. And so then you read the headline, but kind of last, but it all happens in a second. It's like name, know them, associate value by the headline. So the headline is kind of like that first impression, and it's almost your last impression, before you kind of decide to take action or not. So with removing all the sort of red, you can kind of see, you don't really realize it just looking, but that's kind of what your eyes do. Right. So the headline becomes really super critical everywhere. You've got in the news feed, you'll do that. In the My Network, you'll do that. In the inbox, which I'll stay out of there for privacy, it's all in there. It's everywhere. Comments, right? Is it in comments? It's just everywhere. So the headline gets more exposure than almost anything else on your profile, really. And you can't really do much about your face. You can't do much about your name, right? You're stuck with your face, unfortunately for myself and some of us here. You're stuck with your face, you're stuck with your name. You can do whatever you want with your headline. So crappy headlines gives lackluster first impression. You get forgotten, and then no one takes action. And it's the lack of people taking action that's the real cost. And so I'm thinking, like, even just in my invites section, maybe one of these things, there's major opportunity for me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at this. And this isn't really their title, their headline. I'm going to look at this. Let's do show more. Then Michael Ive, we create online courses from scratch for other people, e-learning. I'm just going to straight up evaluate in 1 second if I should push accept or not. Not even so much about this, because I know this is automated. I get it. So I'm going to look at this. This is my evaluation criteria. Cassidy, account specialist at Alpha Media Group. I'm going to read this as well, but I know this is automated because who types at abounsocial.com, company name, field. So I'm going to read this and I'm going to decide in 1 second. Worldwide connector, value creator, networking mentor, board member. I'm going to read that and decide, should I do anything about it, right? So it's just so super important there. And if I don't, whatever opportunity was there for Cassidy or Michael, and I'm not saying these are bad headlines, I'm just saying this is what I do as a recipient do. If this doesn't capture my attention and communicate value and make me do something, then there's just no opportunity for Michael. There's no opportunity for Cassidy or Philip. And if you're here in the Hangout, it's all good. So that's the cost, is people not taking action because they forget about you, or they're just not persuaded to do anything. Did you want to say something, Mike?
I'm sorry. Do keywords or play any role in how you develop your headline?
You know what? Let's talk about that in the panelist discussion. That's a great question.
Okay.
Yep, and then you might even want to throw that in the chat just so we don't forget. I'll say this too. Sometimes people don't like this because it makes you sort of have to do a little bit of work, but I don't think that there's one rule for everyone. I don't think that there's one, use this formula and it works for everyone and it works forever. I think that there are trends and there are fads, and what works for you might not work for me. So you really have to work, I think, within a framework to achieve your goals. I just don't like the use this headline formula. I don't think it works for everybody. Again, you can work within a framework, but I think the best place to start when you're trying to think, what should my really super important headline be? I think you need to ask yourself 3 questions. I think you need to ask yourself, number 1, what do I want to communicate? Like, what is that? Again, what's Michael wanting to communicate? What's Cassidy wanting to communicate? Right? So what do you want to communicate? And then to whom? Like, if I'm on the platform and my old roommate from high school who does, I don't know, maybe they cut hair for a living, I know they're never going to like do business with me. I might do business with them if I want my haircut, but I'm not into like having salon and barbers. I don't care like what I communicate to them. I want to communicate something very specific. And for like me personally, it's going to be I want to communicate that we crush sales enablement. And I want that to be communicated to people who are in charge of sales teams. And so what do you want to communicate to whom? And that to whom is not going to be everyone. I guess that's my point there, is the to whom is not going to be everyone. You can't make everybody happy. Some people, it just doesn't matter. What do you want to communicate to whom? And then how can you do that in a memorable way? So, and then in a memorable way is where I've seen some awesome stuff. So I think that if you leave here today and you look at your headline, I don't want to ever like poo-poo on someone's headline. We're all on a journey. If I look back at the public indexes of my profile over the years, I'd probably now be like, oh my gosh, that was so bad. But maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't so bad, So everyone's on a journey, but start here, ask yourself, what do you want to communicate? What is that? To whom? And then how can you do that in a way where you're actually memorable? Because those are the things that are going to, in the short and long term, encourage action, right? From the to whom. And then I want to say a couple points here, and then I want to move into a panelist discussion, short and sweet today. Just to get your wheels spinning, to give you some frameworks, what I've done is grabbed a few like categories of headlines that I feel like I've seen a lot over the years the buzzwords change, the way people do it changes, but kind of just the categories stay the same. So a lot of times I'll see people do title plus their company. So it's kind of like they're doing, it's like a repeat of their work history, but it's up in the headline section. So I would say like co-founder at Abound Social in my headline. I see that a lot, actually. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that if you don't add something, I think LinkedIn actually auto puts that as your headline, don't they? Yeah, I think I see a couple of head nods there. So title plus company, that probably lives on because LinkedIn's wanting to help people not have an empty important field. I see this one a lot, helping X achieve Y, like helping, I don't even need to go farther. You've seen that, helping X achieve Y. I've seen this a lot. You'd list your expertise, awards, certifications. So you might say like, #1 best-selling book author dash podcast host dash top 500. So you see that quite a bit. You've got service plus your stakes, and so that would be like, what do you do? Like what is your service offering, and what happens if you don't work with me? I've seen that a lot. Maybe there's a time-sensitive announcement. So if this was not every week, if it was once a year, I might put in my headline like, hey, we're having the mastermind tomorrow. Don't forget to register. Like it's over, because I want that message to go out. Seen that quite a bit. I've seen ask me about ... And actually, I personally, I'll get into, we can get into opinions later. This one, I find myself kind of being drawn to the ask me about if it's within my work wheelhouse. If it's like ask me about our CRM or ask me about how whatever. Obviously, there's gimmicky garbage in there, like ask me about how we make people super rich without them having to try really hard. Like obviously that stuff's dumb, but I have seen some really clever ask me about, because I'm just like, oh yeah, I probably would need to learn more about that, and this person knows about it, so I'll check it out. So it makes me pause and stop. So I've seen that, and I like it. And then you've got just these weird unicorns, which is where I'll show you Duffy Dibley. Duffy, sorry, you'll see why I'm laughing in a minute. So this is where I feel like it just helps to start by just going through these 3 questions. Like, what do you want to communicate to whom in a memorable way? And I don't think there's a hot and fast formula for everyone. And this is where you can get some really cool unicorns. So Duffy Dibley has always had the most ridiculous, funny headlines. And that is exactly why I remember Duffy Dibley. And Duffy Dibley is a copywriter, and he's got a really awesome knack for being humorous with his copywriting. And so if I'm Duffy Dibley and I'm going, well, I want to communicate that I'm a fun, clever copywriter to agency owners, so I'm going to be just ridiculous in my headline, right? So it's like starting there, you get something ridiculous like Duffy Dibley. And just so you know I'm serious, I had a call with Duffy on Monday or Tuesday, seeing if we could maybe do some projects together. So Duffy's headline is, wow, you after seeing my keychain collection. So it's like, it's just so dumb. It doesn't, and not everyone can get away with that. Not everyone can get away with that, because like, if you didn't know who Duffy was, you have no idea that he's a writer, right? Anyways, so it's not for everybody, but you can definitely get those unicorns where it's just, I have no idea how you got there. I have no idea, but dang, that was clever and it works. All right. So I will get off my soapbox. I'll leave the screen up here for a couple minutes just so that we can have some inspiration for talking points, and then I'll shut it down or jump screens. Panelist questions. And then Monty, I can't see the chat right now, so if there's anything good in there, feel free to address that too. Panelist questions.
The other thing I want to tell everybody is if you do have questions, you want to drop it into the chat. We're monitoring that, so we can add that to the panelist if that's the way you want to go about it. If you want to share, come online and talk, just click the little hand raise, and we'll get to you on that as well. So 2 ways of which you can ask questions.
Cool. So I see, I think Judy, and if you're a panelist, since you've been on here so many times, you can just kind of jump on. That's fine. No need to raise your hand, Judy.
I'll jump in real quick, Isaac.
Yep. Go for it.
one of the things, I mean, the number one thing I would say to my clients who are lawyers, and the reason I use lawyer, I'm very thoughtful about that in my own headline. I use lawyer, not attorney, because I want to appeal to the less conservative, more entrepreneurial, more visionary type of lawyers. And attorney tends to be a little bit more formalistic and conservative. So being thoughtful about the words, but the one thing we want to reiterate is not using, trying to avoid buzzwords, hyperbole, guru, ninja, expert, team player, self-starter. That's, I don't know. It just, maybe it's that's for me, it is complete turn off. But obviously with the lawyers I work with, they have, their title and then the law firm, and it says absolutely nothing to anybody. So we get very personal on that, and thoughtful about the tone too, what their personality is. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I saw a guy from LA who works for a big company called Electronic Arts. And that was one of the most clever, besides Duffy. I mean, I go for the humor too. I love the humor, but he had Jason Wan I don't usually stalk profiles, but when I do, I usually have a career opportunity for you. Want to connect? That was pretty good.
Nice. That is clever. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and that's for his company. It's his tone, but he really managed to capture that. And then the personality for recruiters, for example, one woman who used a buzzword that was well used in her context, her own spin on it, and that was, she's a recruiter, and we see recruiters using the words unicorns, purple squirrels, kind of create that almost mythical, impossible to find perfect job. But Kimberly Butler used foundations recruiter at Airbnb, career matchmaker, unicorn hunter. I thought that was a good use of sort of a semi-buzz, in that context. And then the personalization, there was another woman, Tijal Wagadia, who is just your friendly neighborhood recruiter, nerd at heart, introvert living in an industry of extroverts. Kind of endearing, sort of vulnerable, saying, I'm not the extrovert, but I want to connect. And so I kind of like those too.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Those are fantastic examples.
Yeah.
Let me jump in on the SEO question that we had earlier, if you don't mind. So we've done a lot of testing with the internal LinkedIn SEO component of your profile and how you show up in your LinkedIn search, how your profile actually shows up. So LinkedIn is a search engine, just like Google and any of the others. Your headline actually does factor into the SEO component of LinkedIn just as much as your titles do on your work. So what we've been advising, there's a number of strategies that you can take with your title based on what you're actually trying to achieve on the platform. Bear with my voice, I'm just getting over bronchitis. So, but anyway, what we've found is that you can really dramatically increase your search appearances if you do some keyword research on what people are looking for within your industry or your niche. So the best way to do that is to go up into the search bar, type in some keywords, and see how many searches there are for that keyword. The other thing is understand that how the SEO within LinkedIn works is they focus pretty much all of their attention on your city or where you're at from a vicinity standpoint, and then spread out from there. So if somebody in Kansas City is searching for marketing director, right? They're going to show you the top results within Kansas City and then spread it out from there. So that's kind of how your search is affected. But based on how the strategy goes, you absolutely have to get attention. Like Isaac has been pointing out throughout this entire presentation, you have to get attention from people when you're out on the platform through your title is the number one way to do that. But figuring in, okay, what are people going to be searching for and how does my profile come up? You'll want to do some keyword research.
Can I throw some fire on that?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay, I'm connected to
love
this
fire.
guy, okay, first level connection. And in his headline, it says cargo owners, if your supply chain is broken, da, 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 da. Okay. So then I went in and I did a search for, up in the top, and I just typed cargo, and then I selected people. He's not even showing up, and I'm looking through a bunch of second degrees are showing up. It's really weird that this guy I'm a first degree connection with him. He leads with cargo in his headline, and he's not showing up, and I've got over 100 pages of results here. And I'm not going that deep, and I'm not getting any first degrees, which is weird because you would think, first of all, it would render first degrees if I'm searching. Then it would render proximity where I live, East Coast. So I don't know about that. It's sort of like keywords and, does it really work? I don't know. Because
I agree. I agree with Judy. I just get second degrees connections and no first degrees at all.
Yeah, they're not going to show you first degrees because you're already connected.
Yeah,
So
but I want first degrees. I mean,
if you want to search your connections, you can do that.
Well,
but that's a change because you used to be able to.
Let me see something here. Hold
Well,
on.
let's bring it back to.
But even if I click on first degree, oh my gosh, I'm putting in first degree with the filter cargo people, and he's still not showing up, which is bizarro. I don't know. But one thing I wanted to add to the comments on what you presented, Isaac, which is really great. I think of headlines as breadcrumbs, not in an SEO sense, but breadcrumbs like if I want to lead you somewhere, so that the first 40 characters, 25 to 40 characters is what shows on mobile. And if I like that headline, I'm going to be compelled to click on that to look at the profile. And if I like what I see in the top part of the profile, I may be inclined to go further into it. So I think of it as headlines, as breadcrumbs. And then I like what Viveka has talked about. I think niche is important because I think the more specific you are in terms of your, sort of presence or who you want to engage with, I think is really helpful. But the one thing I would caution people is, especially now, is if you have sales in your headline or business development, it's almost like that doesn't, to me, I wouldn't want to connect with anyone like that because I'm going to get pitch slapped. So, and I noticed that, Isaac, in a couple of your invites there were quite a few of them were trying to sell you right in the invite. At least they had the decency to be clear about that up front. So that's just what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Let me ask you this. Can we do headlines you don't like and why? Like in that vein, again, I don't want to get into like complain fest, but because for like me, I'm going to see some kinds of headlines and it's going to discourage me from engaging with someone. And I just, for the sake of feedback there, I don't like grumble fests, but like when I see a headline where it's like, I help agency owners do this.
Yeah.
I just feel like I've been on the platform enough to where I don't want to deal with like a pitch right now. I might even really need their services. But that, for me personally, and this is not everybody, but me personally, when I see if I'm the person being helped to achieve whatever, I'm going to go, I'll let them go into the show more drawer. Is that just me? Any other thoughts on that?
No, it seems like an old, worn out, I help. I think it's a little better if you can clarify that. And I don't even use that formula on mine. I just lead with what is up, what I want to be targeted, at least in the first 40 characters. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen all different kinds of headlines, and I actually like the shorter. It's the shorter is better, and it's hard to be short, right? Think of it as a subject line. I mean, it's almost like a subject line in an email. What's going to get you to open it? What's going to, and that's really it, is that headline is kind of like the first inclination of what you're about. And that's why I say, if you want to connect with other CEOs and C-suite, sometimes leading with that is good because they like the peer connection. So if you are a CEO and you want to connect with other CEOs, that's a good thing. But I would never have sales or business development, because that to me is just I don't know, at least for me, I don't want any of that. And the other thing too is I have to say, the past year or so, I'm going to say maybe just 10% of my inbound invites have been anything of value. Most of them are crap. and as soon as they connect, you get the whole bunch of links and all this stuff and, hop on a call nonsense. And it's like, oh gosh.
But Judy, going to your point about the headlines, I think it's also important that we realize that, at least I think that we should realize that they're not static either.
Right.
There are certain
Yeah.
trends. I mean, we saw business development, it was used, okay, and now everybody uses it, or I help agencies, right? So it's not a static proposition either. We need to revisit that and sort of reevaluate it as we go. So it's, evolving, and so we are standing out in a relevant way and have some personality and something that, and I'm going to hand it over to David. Can we do that? He's had his hand up so long now.
Well, David's not a panelist, so he has to wait until
Okay,
open
all
Q&A.
right.
Sorry,
And I
David.
know
Don't worry.
All right.
Somebody brought
He's
up
first in the
something
queue,
here on, can you put other things in your headline? If you put like more descriptive stuff in your headline, aside from like MBA or PhD or whatever, that's actually against terms of service for LinkedIn. So they could technically, do something about that. I don't know if they would, but it annoys me when I export my database and then I got these long headlines in there. It's like, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
But anyway,
You see some people trying to use their last name field as a headline, and we had one company or one seat at one company that had done that for a while, and actually I think it helped. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think in that situation, I think it did help. But then we got logged out of LinkedIn, and they said, like, it looks like this isn't the correct name. Like, will you please update it? And so it was nothing serious, but
yeah.
All right. Any thoughts on how frequently we should revisit and consider like refreshing, polishing our headline, just because of what we were saying, where there's a shelf life to where it's old now. Any thoughts on frequency?
I recommend that people change it up monthly.
Yeah, I was going to say I
Yeah.
tweak quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. And you can also split test that way too. Your search appearances on your profile. I would just encourage everybody to do some testing on that, because your search appearances will improve or reduce. If you're only changing one thing, it's going to give you a good idea about whether or not it's effective. So change up your headline, use some different things, change nothing else on your profile for a number of months, and test it out, and you'll be able to see what is more effective and what is not as effective based on your search appearances. Also, based on the number of people that will connect with you when you're sending out connection requests too.
All right, we'll do 2 more minutes of panelist discussion before we go into open Q&A, unless it's crickets. Anybody else want to throw anything in there?
Do you have any stats on the number of profiles that are still the default versus people that attempt to, customize it? Are there any stats on that?
I don't have any, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, here's a one-off that we came across earlier this week for those of you who are international with the multi-language. So one thing that we're trying to overcome with the headline is we've got different audiences, different languages, this is a global initiative, genuinely. And their Spanish, Portuguese audience was a little bit different than the English, and like, how should we do that? We need to communicate it a little bit differently. So I didn't realize this, but you can change the English headline of your profile, and it does not have to be relevant whatsoever with the other languages. So if you've got something going on that's multi-language, and your headline needs to communicate one thing to one audience in one nation with one language, and another thing to another region, audience, language, they can be opposite. You can be whatever you want. So just so you know, that's very convenient.
I just had one more thing, Isaac. I don't know if you
Sure.
talked about this, maybe I just missed it, but the length of it, I mean, having 120 characters versus 220 or more, if you're creating the headline from your mobile, sometimes people kind of go crazy with that, and they consume the full length as they're creating their headline from their mobile. And there's a reason it is 120. It's harder, to squeeze impact into fewer characters, obviously. But sometimes when people realize they can do a longer headline from their phone, they go nuts, and you don't even see it when it travels all over LinkedIn. So keep it brief if possible. Is my take on the length of it.
All right, let's move into open Q&A. So David, you've been so patient with your little hand up there. You get to go first, but please do try to keep it under 30 seconds.
Sure. Is there any reason or capability of putting in negative or filtering out types of messages in that title?
I'm not tracking. Can you say that
you're
differently?
doing a positive filter by bringing them in and saying not only to whom, but what, right? To say, oh, I do this, but which is good, brings people in, but it also brings, tire kickers in, which you may want, but you may not want. You only want people that are ready to, preferably ready to engage, to spend, etc., and not people that would just come in and go, oh, great, let's see what we can pull out of this guy, which could be very positive, but maybe not your intent or value in your particular profession.
Maybe I'll give you an example for kind of like our world, and maybe just a quick thought on that. So like for Monty and Mine's company, we're going to work with more established companies with a big sales and marketing budget. We don't want to work with solopreneurs or owner operated, right? And so to kind of go back with what you're saying with like the tire kickers. So don't really want to deal with those. Appreciate the journey, but not our wheelhouse. So maybe you could do something like super expensive, like ridiculously expensive SDR that's totally worth it. And then so maybe that's a way to get rid of the tire kickers, but is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. Is there any reason to do that, or have you seen examples of that make sense? I mean, you can do it in the rest of the description, underneath it or whatever else. So I get that part of it, but certain professions I would assume don't need to draw in people that aren't ready to buy.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Please. Yeah.
I think that's a mindset that is misleading. People on LinkedIn are not ready to buy until you've earned the right to sell to them. And so if the mindset is I'm just connecting with these people to sell, that's a good way to just shut out a lot of people. I think what LinkedIn really is a relationship building platform. And you can use it to educate your buyers to be better buyers. But if you just want to connect to pitch, that's going to get you shut down. And it's going to damage your reputation. So entering it with that mindset is really kind of a self-fulfilling downward spiral, as opposed to thinking, how can I educate people to, I was talking with a guy that does bookkeeping, and I said, hey, why don't you help people understand how to vet a good bookkeeper? Or how do you know when it's time to change your bookkeeper? Or what are questions I should ask of a bookkeeper? And then when you have that kind of information, people are more likely to want to come to you and say, hey, you know what? You put out some great information. Can we talk? I'd like to hear about your services. And that's a much better readiness, because it's like with SEO, you got intent, but you don't know quality. With LinkedIn, you can get quality through filters, but you don't know intent. So it's kind of a combination of the two. That's just my opinion for what it's worth.
Yeah. No, it's a good question, David. I think it depends on your audience too. So give it a shot. I don't think there's any reason to not try what you're describing. I think sometimes it's a very prudent thing to do. Okay, Ken, you're up, and then Shireen.
All right, thank you. First of all, Isaac and Monty, thanks for your generosity in bringing this whole group together. It's one of the best things I've found in a long time. So thank you both.
Awesome.
And also my question is going back to the headline. It's interesting. I think Vivica had said, keep it short and sweet. And I was brought up, I guess, to think, use all the space you can use in there to market yourself. So I think that's interesting. But again, too, I'm wondering, I've always coached my clients to say, what words would you want to put in that headline so that people would find you, or that they would find someone like you to fill a job you would be interested in? Is that a proper thought process to developing your headline?
Panelists?
Did I ask that clearly? I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on it.
Give it a little more shot.
I would test that and put in those words and see what comes up. Just like this guy, I wanted this cargo guy that I'm connected to and I can't find him, you know, and that happens. It's like, oh, that guy that does so-and-so. And I go to search, it's like, I can't find him or her. I don't know. I mean, a lot of times, you know, if we try to game the algorithm on LinkedIn, guess what? It doesn't work. Unless, you know, we know how they factor it. I don't know. I would try it and see what comes up. And you know,
I appreciate that. I'm trying to find the balance between the message and the keywords, I guess, really. But thank you.
Yeah, I think Ken, just real quick here. Ken, I think that, you know, going over the 120 characters, whatever, as long as it's relevant, meaningful, add some personality, something that's unique that stands out. If it's meaningful, I mean, of course, go a bit over. But so that's all I meant with that. You know, that doesn't have to be like so tight that you're limiting yourself either, as long as it's meaningful.
Thank you.
Shireen, you are up.
Okay, so I hope you can hear me clearly, Isaac.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was going back to, I think it was Dave's question, and you gave this example, super expensive, but blank, but totally worth it, right? So when I think about hearing that, it sounds great, but I would be like, well, how and why would somebody search on that? Like, how would they even find you if that's in your headline? Which I think is kind of interesting. And it probably even goes back to Ken's point, right? Like, see, I wouldn't even know to search on, I need somebody super expensive. You know what I mean? So I don't understand that.
So Andy Foote, that was based off of Andy Foote's, and he's somewhat of a well-known person on LinkedIn. So he's got a bunch of followers and stuff. So honestly, Andy's not really concerned about whether or not he shows up in search. His is just purely about to get attention, and he has enough attention to worry about the search. But for the rest of us who do want to show up in search and be found, it's just something that your profiles are kind of like web pages. When they get stale, they kind of fall out of the loop in terms of search. So the more you update them, and you really only need to do it more than, you know, no more than once monthly or so. But then you can test specific components of that. Like, does the keywords move the mark for you in terms of your search appearances, or is it your really clever statement that you put with it that allows people to connect with you more readily? So there, you know, there's definitely a recipe, if you would, that comes together, and you just have to play with that a little while over a period of months to split test that to see, does it matter if you show up a lot in search, or is it more important that you have something really, you know, attractive, humorous, or whatever that will make people connect with you?
Yeah, so one, I just want to say to Monty, I really appreciate that, especially about the split testing and the fact that you say monthly, because it's like, I mean, it sits out there, and sometimes I wonder, why do people, you know, they want to link into me? It's like, what's drawing them? Like, what specifically, other than, as to, I think Judy said, being pitch slapped, right? Kind of deal. But the one thing I guess I'm getting out of this is that, and again, even to Judy's comment, I wrote down, don't game it, just be real, right? Don't try to game this thing, just be real and authentic in who you are and who you're trying to attract, or, you know, or connect with, or to reach out to, and so forth. So I just want to say that. So I appreciate it.
I think that's really well said. I mean, there's not really any reason to try and game it. You know, because everybody should have a strategy or a purpose for what they're doing on LinkedIn and why. So as long as your strategy is accomplishing your purpose, then that's great. The algorithm is the algorithm, and the, you know, SEO is SEO. But whether I'm found in search 700 times or 1,400 times, you know, a week, matters not if I'm not, you know, achieving the goals that I have for LinkedIn.
Yes, thank you.
Another thing too here is to keep in mind the frame of mind of the person doing the action. So if somebody is doing a search, they're in a certain frame of mind. They're looking for something, right? And so that's a very different frame of mind than someone who's just putzing through the newsfeed and you want to grab their attention. Very different frame of mind. Yeah, just keep that in mind as well. Like, usually people aren't using LinkedIn search because they want to give you money. They're usually in it for themselves. They're usually in it for themselves and wanting to get something from someone. And so to keep that frame of mind involved, or in frame of mind in mind. Any other questions? We've got about 5 more minutes before we shut it down. Now is your chance.
There was a question, Isaac, that we had in the chat that talked about emojis or using special characters like bold. You can go out to different websites and get the HTML code or whatever. I advise don't do that, because not all browsers and mobile apps see it. So if you do that, what it shows up as is little squares. So you're basically eliminating your ability to be seen there, and it's limited to those people that have those fonts and are able to see it. So just go with a regular old standard type that LinkedIn gives you.
David's got another question.
Yeah, well, last week I was the guy that brought up this issue about tools, which I hope is going to be a topic covered sometime in the not too distant future. But I'm also very interested in 2 things. One, I think Charlene or somebody brought up in the chat, and that has to do with how you measure effectiveness. Are there tools to be able to know how effective your profile is? I mean,
that's a good question.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could have a heat map of your profile?
Yeah.
Right. The other part of that is, are you at some point going to cover posts, articles, etc., and their value?
We've done the posts and stuff probably before you jumped on, not too terribly long ago. So definitely it'll be a recurring theme for sure. Don't have a production queue on that. For tools, next week, Dimitri is going to talk about CRM integration tools. I have no resources on the efficacy of your headline. Anybody else? That's a great question.
Well, I appreciate the idea about what Monty said about doing a monthly, but you've got a lot more than that in the profile. And once you get, once you know that the headline works, let's say that you found a perfect headline, then everything else after that is whatever your profile is, and or whether you have posts or articles or other attributes out on, or assets out on the internet.
Yeah, now you can't, there's not a lot of tools out there. I mean, there's some tools, but they're not extremely effective. You can combine a lot of what LinkedIn gives you, though. They'll show your search appearances on a weekly basis. They'll show who's viewed your profile over a 90-day period, so you get to see your little mountain peak, and the more that you can take those 2 things combined with your connection percentage. Like if you start tracking how many connection requests am I sending out there, how many people are requesting to connect with me. So you kind of have to do it manually a little bit to see how effective it is. But between the search appearances, who's been looking at your profile, and your connection rate, you can pretty well determine how well your message is being received and how well your profile is performing. So it doesn't have to take a long period of time, but if you track it over time, you'll get a good feel to where you kind of have it like locked in, like what you're saying, right? And then you can just change minor things like your about section. I also recommend always, one of the key factors for profiles that are really overlooked is go out and get as many recommendations as you possibly can from people, and make sure that they are current. If you have recommendations that are 6 months old, go get some new ones.
By the way, Monty, I'm very interested in, maybe this would be something for the future, of actually developing a framework for tracking.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. You talking about actually developing an app, or just creating the workflow?
That would be nice. That's a business in its own right, mind you. But I'm just thinking that, for our purposes, since there isn't one, or it doesn't appear to be one, it would be good to have some scheme or framework for how it is you would track your effectiveness, and
Sure.
What assets are creating what effects. I mean, I can put, I can't put in tracking things inside of LinkedIn per se, but I can use Bitly or something in a comment to see if they went to a particular article off of LinkedIn or even on LinkedIn, right? Because I can see that they hit that link, but you know, it's not like I can use tracking pixels.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Maybe we'll work on putting something like that together for everybody.
So sure, let's just really quick try and to answer Shireen's question about effectively, you know, choosing your goals and measuring. And I don't know, Shireen, that there's going to be a really clear answer, because it's not like you're running an ad campaign where you've got something that you can kind of just track in a dashboard. It's a little bit more ad hoc. But did anybody want to chime in on Shireen's question about that?
So Shireen, why don't you walk real quickly through what your actual strategy is?
Well, you know, it's interesting. So the reason why I asked the question was because we were talking, I think, a lot about, you know, the headline and the factors, like how can you tell whether or not your headline is really working? And again, to Monty's point, the split testing, changing things up every month and kind of split testing that way. And so when we started in the conversation about the tools and so forth, I was like, well, wouldn't that be different for everybody based on what they think is relevant versus their goal on LinkedIn? So I hope that makes sense, right? So I would have a goal of LinkedIn. And I think, again, to Judy's point, is really I want to give people information. I want people to see me as the expert as I am, right? And so I personally don't do a whole lot of outreach, but a lot of people want to link into me. And now I'm trying to parse out, well, really, why? Because I don't want to pitch. What are you seeing that makes you want to link into me? Because what I find is people want to link in and then they do nothing. They go nowhere. They don't participate. They don't, when I send something out and ask them, are you interested in coming? There's crickets. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. I want a power network. I don't want a sleeping network.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So the question was just a matter of, well, what's my goal? And then how can I then tailor my entire profile to get the right people based on that, and then just the relevance of it. You know what I'm saying? That's
Can
all.
I interject into that? I've supported a lot of sales teams and for large organizations, and you know, there's a couple different models. One's the pipeline, and one is the funnel, standard kind of things. And part of what we're doing with LinkedIn, as I was mentioning earlier, is great. I mean, it's the top part of the funnel. It's like chumming per se. But the further on you go, the more you have to do, like over on HubSpot or something like that, in terms of developing what the rest of that funnel looks like, and then reflect back on what your bait was. So a lot of it doesn't come up front, although heat maps or whatever else might be helpful. It really depends on how it is that you understand what audience you are drawing in, which doesn't come from your profile. It comes from those engagements, interactions.
Yeah.
That's very true. So
Yep.
you really, to have like the full spectrum, you really need to be tracking like your campaign and referral source in your CRM all the way upstream to see what the real ROI is, which it can be kind of sophisticated for a lot of folks. That's a great point, David.
But not just your ROI, basically how you're, you know, helping the funnel move along, right? I mean, it does affect our ROI, but you have to know how things move along.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big conversation that maybe we can address in another mastermind.
For sure. All right, well, we're past the hour, 5 minutes. So it was great to see you all. Thank you. See you next week. It looks like Dimitri is going to be sharing on some CRM integration tools, which should be great. He's also in Germany, so time change difference. Got to make sure that it's during his dinner time. So good to see everybody. Have a good week.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Thank you all for joining.